Thanks. It's now my pleasure to bid welcome to Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, leader of Free Belarus. Welcome here to the stage with us today. I was interviewing you last year virtually, so we're really delighted. I'm personally really delighted to have you here on stage, that we are back here with a full audience in Copenhagen. And I'm sure our audience, which you could already hear, feels the same. I want to remind you that you can ask questions in the app. If you state your name as well, I might even read that aloud so that we can put them in here into the session. I'll get them up here on my iPad. But I'll first turn to you, Sviatlana, and ask you of course, on Ukraine, our theme of today, defending Ukraine. The world has changed a lot for the worse since our last discussion a year ago. You've also said that we didn't really learn from the mistakes in Belarus in 2020. How do you both see that, and what more can we sort of do for Ukraine?
So first of all, hello everyone. I'm so glad to see you and to be here in Copenhagen. So I wouldn't say that it's parallel. I think it's a sequence of events. You know, if Belarusian uprising had won in 2020 with the help of European assistance, maybe this war in Ukraine wouldn't happen, or at least Putin wouldn't have such a leverage on in this war. Maybe he couldn't have such a huge approach to Kiev, and we wouldn't see atrocities in Bucha, for example. For sure, the reaction of the democratic world could be braver back in 2020, but I have to say that the first serious sanctions on Belarusian regime have been imposed only in 10 months after crackdown of Belarusian uprising. So the lack of initial strong reaction brought Lukashenko to impunity and gave him time to adapt to the sanctions. And I also think that so-called gradual approach to sanction regime, doesn't work. For example, in 2021, when after hijacking Ukrainian flight, the sanctions have been imposed, the prices for potash were so high, but the trade was continuing with the regime. I understand what the logic behind it, but the lessons have to be learned. Half measures only harm. But maybe on positive note, I think that event in Belarus in 2020 managed to unite Europe, and this coalition of countries was already prepared to give strong and fast reaction to the events into the war in Ukraine. And helped, and I'm sure that was also the result of Belarusian uprising.
Right. In my next question, in late February, you assumed the title of national leader of Belarus and stated that Lukashenko committed treason in making Belarus a participant in the invasion of Ukraine. And you have, of course, this international audience here in front of you, and I just wanted you to elaborate on that and how you sort of want us to react to that.
So my message to this audience and to the democratic world is rather simple. Isolate the regime who became accomplice in this war, collaborant in this war, and help Belarusian people. Make Belarusian regime pariah. Don't trade with the state enterprises. Make him to understand that he is nobody in Belarus, that he is nobody in the democratic world, that there will be no future for him, and the cronies of Lukashenko for sure will see it and understand. But on the other hand, help to Belarusian people. Open doors for Belarusians, for Belarusian NGOs and media. Help us to promote Belarusian culture in the world. It's so important for our Belarusian identity. Issue visas for Belarusians, launch different educational programs for representatives of our country, and recognize democratic forces as representatives of free Belarus. And let's show Belarusians that there is a parallel free state, and people will input much more into this fight, knowing that we are welcomed in European family.
Great. I have a question here from the audience that I think is now just moved up here. How do you plan to reestablish trust between Ukrainians and Belarus and individual Belarusians after the war?
Actually, it was a shock for me as well to see how in one day Belarusian people became enemies for Ukrainians, because we were sure that Ukrainian people know about the situation in Belarus, that Belarusians are fighting against dictator, and on the 24th of February, Belarus became co-aggressor, we understood that the attitude to Belarusians has changed, and we had to launch explanational program, first of all for Ukrainians, for them to distinguish Belarusian regime and Belarusian people. And step by step, Ukrainians understood that we are on their side, that Belarusian partisans worked hard to stop Russian troops moving to Ukraine, that Belarusian people sent information to Ukrainian army about missiles launched and aircrafts launched. A lot of Belarusian men are fighting now in Ukrainian army, defending Ukraine, but also defending future, or defending Belarus. Belarusian people who once fled Belarus because of repressions started to help Ukrainian refugees, because we know what it is to grab your child and leave your country in a hurry because you are persecuted. So I think that our people will not get loose. Will not lose this connection between our nations, and for sure we will manage to trust to each other in the future when regime will be kicked out of our country, and new Belarusian government will install good relationship with the Ukrainian government. We have already launched the Office of Democratic Belarus in Kiev to be closer to parliament and government of Ukraine and to people of Ukraine.
That's great. I think that will be some great initiatives. I also want us to, of course, I mean, for everybody here in the audience, there's a lot of democracy activists. What you want us, also when we leave stage in a little while, what you want everybody sort of to take away, what can they practically do to help a free Belarus? What do you want to see of individual action, collective action from us?
So I ask you to get a postcard, to find addresses of our political prisoners in jails and write them letters. Because it's so important for them to understand that they are not abandoned, they are not forgotten. They're so happy, to get letters, especially from abroad. It gives them hope that the whole world is fighting for them. Also, if you have possibility, you can donate to our human rights defending centers, to media, to families of political prisoners. I know, Jonas, that you wrote a letter to one of my colleagues whose mother is in jail. It is a really good example. And also you can participate in Belarusian events and Ukrainian events to support our region. And of course, urge your government to keep focus on Belarus and Ukraine. It's extremely crucial for us.
Thank you, Sviatlana, Tsikhanouskaya. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Pleasure.